Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a world painted in shadows, cynical politics, and sudden violence, the world of Dashiell Hammett. Specifically, his classic crime novel, The Glass Key.
Yeah, and the stuff we're working from here, it's basically a collection of excerpts straight from the book itself. Plus, it looks like some, newspaper reports mixed in and descriptions of his other work.
Right, so our mission, just using these pages you've got here, is to navigate this really tangled plot, try to figure out who these characters are, what makes them tick, uncover the truth behind, well, multiple deaths, actually,
Yeah, more than one.
and really get a feel for this cutthroat political world Hammett lays out.
It's kind of like being handed puzzle pieces, isn't it? You have to build the picture just from what's right there. It's a great way to see how Hammett actually builds the story.
Exactly. So settle in. We're going to pull out some sharp insights, maybe a few surprising facts straight from the text, and explore a story that's, well, definitely not simple, but always compelling. Okay, let's dive in.
Hammett just throws us right in. We open in a gambling room. You can almost hear the dice rolling. And that's where we meet Ned Beaumont. He's our central figure.
He's focused, right. Playing dice.
Yeah, totally focused on the game. Then he steps back. The text says he needs to refuel.
And right away, we see his connection to the city's power structure.
Yeah.
He runs into Walter Ivans, who's clearly upset, stuttering pretty badly, asks him, did you talk to Paul?
And this Paul, we quickly learn, is Paul Madvig, a big political player. Their relationship, even from this first moment, it feels kind of casual, familiar, even though they're talking about something serious.
And that serious thing just lands. Ned goes up to Paul's place. Paul's looking out the window, China Street, and Ned just tells him, straight up, Taylor Henry's dead in a gutter up the street.
Paul Madvig's reaction here is one of those first little clues about the world we're entering. Ned drops this bombshell, and Paul, he just says kind of flatly, is that so?
So strange.
Yeah, and when Ned pushes him, like, shouldn't you be upset? Paul just says, do you want me to get hysterical about it? It's a really striking first look at him.
Okay, and the newspaper report we have from the Observer, it confirms the grim details. Taylor Henry, Senator Ralph Bancroft Henry's son, dead in China Street.
Right. Cause of death is a skull fracture, concussion from hitting the curb. Happened after he was hit on the forehead, probably with, like, a blackjack or something blunt.
And it says Ned Beaumont found the body first, called it in from the log cabin club phone, then a patrolman Smith confirmed it.
Chief Rainey's response. The paper says a wholesale roundup of all suspicious characters. Seems like the standard procedure.
The go-to police move, yeah.
Ned's actions right after finding the body are kind of interesting, too. He reports it, talks to Paul, and then the text describes him just going about his routine. Shaving, bathing, dressing.
Like he's trying to just, I don't know, shake it off.
Maybe. His morning keeps going, leads him to an apartment building. He ends up calling the cops from a drugstore for a Miss Lee Wilshire. She's in some guy named Bernie Despain's apartment.
And she found something important there.
Yeah, $1,200 worth of Taylor Henry's IOUs. Lee Wilshire tells the police she actually heard Despain threaten Taylor Henry just a couple of days before.
And Despain, this gambler, he's just vanished.
Convenient.
Very convenient. And this ties right into Ned's own situation. It's not just about finding who killed Taylor Henry. Ned tells Paul later, really forcefully, I have to get this guy. Talking about Despain.
Why? What's the deal with Despain?
We find out Ned lost big gambling, including a $3,200 bet that Despain basically welched on, refused to pay up. The Peggy O'Toole bet.
Ah, okay, so it's about the money.
Well, yes and no. For Ned, it's deeper. He says, like, what good am I if my leg's gone? I can take my tail out from between my legs and feel that I'm a person again, and not just something that's being kicked around. The money's important enough, but it's not the real thing. It's getting me licked. So chasing Despain is about reclaiming himself, his control, his luck.
Exactly. That's what drives him, and it sends him traveling, actually, to New York, hunting for Despain. He connects with someone named Jack, who seems to be working for Ned now.
Jack finds him, or meets him.
Jack meets him at a place called Tom and Jerry's. Sounds like the kind of spot Despain might hang out.
So Ned confronts him there.
Yep. Walks up to Despain, demands the money, and almost immediately, bang, Ned gets sucker punched hard by this guy called the Kid, who is with Despain.
Ouch. That's his first real beating in the story.
It is. But right there, after getting knocked flat, you see Ned's incredible resilience. He just gets back up. The Kid even mocks him, how's the belly? Ned ignores him, still focused on Despain.
Doesn't get the money, though.
Not yet. Doesn't get Despain either.
Yeah.
But him just refusing to stay down, that really stands out.
Okay, so while Ned's dealing with that, back in the city, Hammett's painting this political picture.
Yeah.
There's an election coming up.
Right, and a really intense rivalry between Paul Madvig and this other figure, Shadowy.
And somehow, Ned gets tangled up with Aurori.
Directly. Shad sends his guy, Whiskey Vassos, to Ned. Shad's heard, or maybe assumes, that Ned and Paul are finished, that they've broken for good and all.
So Aurori sees an opportunity. What's the offer?
It's quite something. First, he offers to set Ned up with the finest gambling house this state's ever seen after the election. Full protection guaranteed.
And Ned?
Ned initially turns it down, says it seems like a waste of time, doubts he and Shad could even get along. And he specifically says he wouldn't take money just to hurt Paul, even with things being tense between them.
Okay, so he refuses.
At first. But Aurori doesn't give up easily. He shifts tactics. Offers cash. $10 grand in cash right now if you'll come in, and 10 more election night if we beat Paul. The gambling house offer's still on the table too.
And Ned?
And Ned, surprisingly, after saying no, takes the cash, just says thanks, pockets the 10 grand.
Whoa, okay, that definitely makes you question things. His loyalty, his motives.
Exactly. And right after taking the money, he starts discussing ways to go after Paul. Mentions the Taylor Henry murder, some streetcar franchise deal, trouble at the county clerk's office.
And he's playing both sides. Or just Aurori's side now.
It's murky. He even points out that using some of this stuff could blow back on him. Then Aurori wants him to stay put for protection.
And Ned refuses again.
Insists on leaving. Which leads to this confrontation with Jeff Gardner, one of Aurori's guys. Ned pulls a gun, shoots Jeff in the thigh, just like that.
Cold. What does he say?
Something like, I don't mind plugging you, Jeff, and reminds him, remember, I owe you something.
Okay, shooting Jeff. That probably doesn't end well for Ned.
No kidding. That triggers Ned's second ordeal, and this one's much, much worse. He's captured, taken to Aurori's place, and basically tortured. Repeatedly beaten by Jeff and another guy, Rusty.
The descriptions are pretty brutal in the source.
They are. Jeff's described as cruel, Rusty as just sullenly going along with it. But again, Ned's defiance comes through. The text says, every time he comes to you, he gets up and starts something. He's in terrible shape, but his will just isn't broken.
How does he get out?
He attempts a desperate escape, uses whatever he can find, a cigarette lighter, some paper, mattress stuffing to set a fire against the locked door.
Resourceful, even then.
But also, the text notes his state of mind. A cunning gleam came into his one open eye as he looked at the lighter. The gleam was not sane. He sets the fire, uses a wet towel against the smoke, and just waits. It's pure survival instinct.
Where does he end up after that?
He wakes up in St. Luke's Hospital. The nurse tells him this is the third day. He's clearly been through absolute hell.
Then people start visiting him there.
They do. Janet Henry shows up. She's Senator Henry's daughter, and we find out Paul Madvig is quite interested in her. She comes with Paul, says she simply had to come.
While he's laid up, does more information come out?
Yeah, a lot of it through the newspaper again. The Observer specifically starts running articles linking Paul Madvig directly to Taylor Henry's murder. And they mention Ned going after Despain.
How do they spin that?
One article basically accuses the police of holding off on the murder investigation for a week. So, quote, a gambler high in political circles could use it to square a grievance with another gambler, meaning my going after Despain to collect my money.
Wow. So they're using Ned's own actions to paint Paul as corrupt, manipulating the police.
Exactly. It shows you how the media in this story isn't just reporting, it's a weapon in this political fight.
How does Ned react when Janet mentions these articles?
His reaction is pure Hammett dryness. I usually make senators' daughters cry.
Okay. What else happens at the hospital?
Ned starts getting anonymous letters asking questions aimed at Paul's daughter, Opal Madvig. Things like, what do you know about Paul Madvig that Shadow Rory was so anxious to learn? Has it anything to do with the murder of Taylor Henry?
Another layer of intrigue. Who sent them?
Ned immediately puts his guy, Jack, on finding out who wrote them.
And does Opal visit?
She does, and she's a wreck. Asks Ned straight out, did Dad kill him?
What does Ned say?
His denial is instant and fierce. You're crazy. Listen to me, Snip. Your father had absolutely nothing to do with Taylor's murder. He's incredibly protective of Paul on this specific point, even after their own falling out.
The Observer doesn't let up.
Not at all. Another article comes out, this one an open letter to the mayor. It lays out really specific, damaging claims.
Like what?
Like, Opal kept meeting Taylor Henry secretly in a furnished room he rented. They were there together the day he died. Paul went to the Henry house that night and left angry. Paul was seen near the murder spot just minutes before the body was found, and crucially, the police aren't digging into any of this.
That's pretty damning stuff, true or not.
Right. Ned tries to explain it to Opal, tells her the Observer's publisher, Matthews, is basically owned by Bill Rohn's Shadow Rory's candidate running against Senator Henry because Matthews is deep in debt.
So it's pure political manipulation. Print lies to hurt Paul.
That's what Ned says. Matthews prints what Rohn tells him to print. It's not about truth, it's about leverage.
Does Opal believe him?
Doesn't seem like it. She's stuck on the idea Paul's guilty, keeps insisting he's a murderer, and tells Ned, "I'll never believe you again." Shows how effective Aurora's smear campaign is, even inside Paul's own family.
What about the anonymous letters? Does Jack find out who wrote them?
He does. Jack reports back, and all signs point to Opal Madvig herself.
Opal wrote them. Why?
Well, Jack found the place mentioned in the article 1324, a furnished room rented under the name French, which Taylor and Opal used. The landlady's description fits Opal perfectly, and she says Opal was there a lot, even after Taylor died. Jack figures the Observer got a tip about the place. Police checked it first, but his contact let him look around too. It seems Opal might have been trying to stir things up, or maybe plant suspicion away from herself. It's unclear exactly why, but the evidence points to her.
Okay, so we've got Taylor Henry's murder, the political war, Ned getting beaten up, the media attacks, Opal maybe writing anonymous letters. It's already complicated.
And then Hammett adds another murder. The newspaper runs a story, "Second Brother Killed."
Who is it this time?
Francis F. West. And it's instantly significant because he was shot less than a block from where his brother, Norman West, was killed the month before.
Norman West. Wasn't he the one killed by that alleged bootleg car?
Yeah.
Driven by Timothy Ivins?
Exactly. Timothy Ivins, who's currently in jail for manslaughter over Norman's death. Francis, the second brother, was a waiter, shot 8 times by guys in a speeding black touring car.
Okay, so how do the West brothers' murders connect to everything else?
This is where it gets really tangled. Paul Madvig tells Ned that Boyd West, the surviving brother, and a key witness against Tim Ivins, suddenly isn't sure he can identify Tim anymore.
That's huge for Tim Ivins. He might get off.
Right. Ned talks to Walter Ivins, Tim's brother, the one who stutters. Walter knows this could free Tim. But then Ned pushes Walter about his alibi for the night Francis West was shot.
What was Walter's alibi?
Walter says he was at our club, likely the log cabin club they all frequent from 8 p.m. till after 2 a.m. He even names witnesses. Harry Sloss, Ben Ferris, Brager.
Sounds solid, maybe.
But Ned immediately picks up on something. He notes Walter usually leaves earlier than that. He tells Paul flat out he was making himself an alibi in our club.
Making an alibi, implying Walter was involved in Francis's murder.
Or at least knew about it. Ned sees the danger right away. He warns Paul that Shadow Rory could spin this, make it look like Walter killed Francis to silence him and saved him, and used their club, Paul's club, to set up the alibi. It implicates Paul indirectly.
Man, the layers. So what does Ned do next?
He goes to see the district attorney, Farr, tries to talk about Despain, but Farr is cagey, mentions needing Paul's support again, showing how tied up law enforcement is with politics.
Does Ned get anywhere with Farr?
He gives Farr some info, like where to find Sloss, one of Walter's alibi witnesses, but then Ned does something really provocative.
What's that?
He asks Farr, sort of casually, if it would help things if Paul just let himself be arrested for the Taylor Henry murder.
Whoa. Why would he do that?
It feels like a test, a strategic play. Ned basically tells Farr he knows Farr is Paul's creature, saying, "It's not for you to do much Paul wouldn't tell you to do."
Yeah.
He's showing Farr he knows the game is rigged.
While this is happening, what about Janet Henry?
She contacts Ned again. She's convinced she knows what happened the night Taylor died and needs to tell him.
What's her story?
She says she saw Paul leave their house looking furious. Then she saw Taylor run out after him. A moment later, she saw Taylor stumble or fall. In her mind, putting 2 and 2 together.
She thinks Paul killed him right there.
Exactly. How could I help knowing then that Taylor had run out after Paul and had caught up with him and had been killed by him? She even mentions a missing hat at the scene, thinking it supports her theory that Paul attacked him.
How does Ned react to her theory?
He dismisses it, based on Paul's physical presence. He tells her Paul wouldn't have had to kill Taylor, and he wouldn't have done it. He could have managed him with one hand, and he doesn't lose his head in a fight. Basically, Paul was strong enough to handle Taylor without killing him.
Does Ned tell her what he did find?
He seems to. Well, lie, or at least mislead her significantly. He says he just found the body, there was nobody else there, I didn't find anything else. He specifically says no hat, nothing. which feels like an omission at best.
Why would he lie?
Maybe to protect Paul. Or maybe because he suspects something else entirely and doesn't want Janet muddying the waters. He ends by telling her, pretty coldly, that whoever killed Taylor did the world a favor.
Okay, and Harry Sloss, one of Walter Ivan's alibi guys, Ned pointed far towards him. Does Sloss had anything?
Sloss confirms to Ned that, yeah, he did see Paul and Taylor arguing under some trees near the club the night Taylor died.
That sounds important. Does Ned think so?
You know, when Sloss tells him, Ned just brushes it off as unimportant. He definitely seems to be working on a different angle already.
And then comes Ned's affidavit, right? This is a huge twist.
It really is. Ned goes to D.A. Farr's office and dictates a formal sworn statement to Farr's stenographer.
What does it say?
It claims that Paul Madvig confessed to Ned, confessed that he accidentally killed Taylor Henry, that Taylor chased him from the Henry house, they fought, Paul hit him with a rough, heavy brown walking stick, Taylor fell, and Paul burned the stick afterwards.
He puts a confession from Paul on the record. Why? And how does Farr react?
That's the question, isn't it? Why? And Farr's reaction, or lack of it, is key. The text says Farr shows no excitement, suggests he either already knew something like this, or maybe he doesn't fully buy Ned's story, or perhaps he sees it as part of a larger game.
It feels like Ned is deliberately forcing things, maybe trying to smoke out the real killer, or maybe creating a specific narrative for Paul. It's so ambiguous.
Absolutely. It adds yet another layer to Ned's methods and his very complicated loyalty.
Okay, so the affidavit is out there. What's the next move?
The plot thickens even more. Ned tracks down Jeff Gardner, one of the guys who beat him up at O'Rourke's, finds him drunk in a bar.
Jeff. The guy Ned shot in the leg.
The very same. Ned sees his chance and starts leaning on Jeff, pressuring him hard for information about Shadow Rory.
Does Jeff crack?
He does, completely breaks. Ned plays him perfectly, gets him talking, and Jeff confesses to killing both Francis West and Norman West.
Both brothers. How?
He admits he hit Norman with the car, confirms the bootleg car story was true, but he was driving it, and he shot Francis.
Why?
Who was it for? He says point blank he did it for Shadow Rory.
Rory ordered the hits. What was the motive?
To mess with Paul Madvig. Norman West was going to testify against Tim Ivins, described as Paul's man in that manslaughter trial. Francis was the other witness who could put Tim away. Jeff spells it out. Shad wanted Tim to get off to make trouble for Paul. Rory was clearing the path for Tim Ivins to walk free, purely to damage Paul politically.
So Rory orchestrated the murders of two witnesses just to score political points against Paul. Ice cold.
Exactly. And Jeff drops one more bombshell. Remember Walter Ivans's suspicious alibi for the night Francis was killed? Being at the club late?
Yeah, Ned thought he was faking it.
Well, Jeff confirms Walter was there meeting Jeff Gardner, the actual killer. Walter wasn't just establishing an alibi, he was establishing it with the murderer, likely arranged by Rory.
Unbelievable. So that ties the West murders directly into the Rory-Madvig war and clears up the Ivins angle.
Completely. With this confession from Jeff, Ned seems to have the truth about the West murders nailed down. Now he sets the stage for the final act regarding the Taylor Henry killing.
How does he do that?
He makes two calls. First, to Paul Madvig's mother, tells her to get Paul over to his place, says he'll wait all night. Then he calls Janet Henry, tells her they're ready for the fireworks, and suggests she bring her father, Senator Henry.
Okay, setting up a big confrontation, where does it happen?
It happens at Senator Henry's house. Ned and Janet are waiting near the front door. The senator comes out, looking determined, says he's going out to shoot somebody.
Presumably Paul, right? Given Ned's affidavit.
That's the clear implication. But Ned stops him.
How does he justify stopping him?
He flashes this old, outdated special investigator appointment card from last month. A flimsy excuse, but it works. Senator Henry immediately accuses Ned of trying to save his murderous friend, Paul.
But Ned denies that.
Yeah, he refutes it. Says Paul is politically finished anyway, sunk, and is being double-crossed. He implies that once Paul is truly down, even guys like D.A. Farr will turn on him. But Ned insists he's not there just to shield Paul.
So what happens then?
After a moment, Senator Henry caves. He confesses he killed Taylor Henry.
The senator himself. Wow, how did it happen?
His story matches parts of the narrative Ned built with the affidavit. Taylor confronted him, attacked him, called him a bloodsucker over some estate money Taylor thought was his. The senator says he hit Taylor with his cane. Taylor fell, hit his head on the curb, and the senator admits he took the cane and burned it, just like Ned's affidavit claimed Paul did.
So Ned's affidavit, claiming Paul confessed, it mirrored the senator's actual actions. Was Ned guessing? Or did he know somehow?
The source doesn't explicitly say how Ned knew to put those details in the affidavit. Maybe it was an incredibly shrewd guess based on inconsistencies. Maybe he'd found a clue earlier he didn't reveal. Maybe Paul told him something off record that hinted at it. Hammett leaves that ambiguous. But the result is the senator confesses the truth.
And Janet's there to hear it. Her whole theory about Paul just shattered.
Completely shattered. The truth was much closer to home and much uglier.
What's Ned's reaction to the senator's confession? Is he sympathetic?
Not in the slightest. He's absolutely brutal. Calls Senator Henry a pimp. Then he turns on Janet, tells her straight up that she and her father were poisoned for Paul.
Poison, how?
He says they both looked down on Paul, saw him as a lower form of animal life and fair game for any kind of treatment. Even though, Ned points out, Paul was genuinely in love with Janet. It's a devastating assessment of their class prejudice and manipulation.
That's incredibly harsh. How does Janet take it?
Amidst all this, she tells Ned about a dream she had. This is where the book's title comes from.
The glass key dream.
Yeah. She dreamt she and Ned found a key under a doormat, but it was made of glass. When they tried to use it to open a door, it shattered and snakes came pouring out.
Snakes.
Wow.
What a metaphor. For truth, trust, something fragile that breaks and reveals danger.
It seems like it. Ned kind of dismisses it. It was just a dream. But then he adds this weird little detail, says that in the dream, she threw his trout back. Adds a strange personal note to it all.
Okay, so the senator confessed. What's the final scene described in the sources?
Paul Madvig shows up at Ned's apartment or rooms, sees Ned's bags are packed. Ned tells him Janet is there.
Does Janet say anything to Paul?
She apologizes. We don't know for exactly what, maybe for accusing him, maybe for her family's role and everything. It's brief.
And then Ned.
Ned delivers the final punch, tells Paul flat out that Janet is leaving with him, with Ned.
Oof. How does Paul react to losing Janet to Ned after everything?
The description is stark. Paul goes pale, just mutters the word luck, and leaves defeated. Leaves the door open behind him. Janet looks at Ned, but Ned is just staring fixedly at the now empty doorway. It's an ending full of loss, ambiguity.
Okay, let's try and pull these threads together. What does this all mean, based on what we've read?
Well, you see how everything connects, right? Taylor Henry's murder, the West brothers being killed by Aurory's man, the political war between Paul and Shad, the newspapers being used as weapons, all the personal stuff, Ned and Paul's complex friendship, Paul's thing for Janet, Opal's distress, the senator's secret, Aurory's whole network, the Ivans brothers. It's all tangled up.
Yeah, it seems like everything revolves around power, loyalty, betrayal, and just trying to survive in this really corrupt environment.
Exactly. The world Hammett shows us in these bits, it's just profoundly cynical. Politics isn't about serving anyone. It's a brutal fight for control. Murder, manipulating the DA like Farr, it's all fair game.
Justice definitely isn't blind here. It's just another tool for the powerful, like with the Tim Ivins case or how Aurory planned to frame Walter Ivins. And loyalty. It seems like it's always being tested, twisted, broken.
And Ned Beaumont himself. He's such an enigma. Is he a detective? Is he just loyal to Paul even when they're fighting? Is he a cold manipulator using that affidavit, using Jeff's confession?
Or is he just, like he said earlier, trying to get his luck back, trying to feel like a person again in this mess?
Could be. His actions are definitely morally gray. Taking Aurory's money, setting that fire, the affidavit. He seems focused on the outcome, not necessarily playing by any rules.
And the truth itself. It's not like one big reveal. It comes out in layers through different people. The papers, Janet's wrong idea, Paul's supposed confession, the senator's real one, Jeff's confession. People hide it, twist it, use it.
Right. And the ending, even though we know who killed Taylor Henry and the Wests, it doesn't feel like a win. Paul's crushed, politically and personally. Ned and Janet are leaving together, but it feels, I don't know, forged in darkness, not romance. Ned even tells her, you're all right, only you're not all right for Paul.
And the system itself, the corruption, it feels like that just continues.
Yeah, the source material implies the underlying rot is still there.
The sources also gave us little glimpses of Hammett's other work.
They did. Brief descriptions, but intriguing. You get the Continental Op, this short, squat, unsentimental tank of a detective dealing with weird cases, family curses, corruption.
The Maltese Falcon, obviously. Sam Spade hunting that treasure.
The Thin Man, with Nick and Nora Charles, the sophisticated couple solving crimes with cocktails and wit, and Woman in the Dark, hinting at mystery and danger. It shows his range, but you see those recurring themes. Violence, shady characters, the dark side of things.
Definitely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the glass key, maybe think about that dream Janet had. The glass key. Shattering. unleashing snakes. What fragile things were people relying on here? Loyalty, trust, power, maybe even truth itself.
And when those things were tested, forced, they broke, revealing something dangerous underneath.
Yeah, it leaves you thinking that sometimes, getting the truth isn't actually enough to fix what's really broken in the world, or maybe just in people.
A fittingly dark thought for Hammett, indeed.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Dashiell Hammett's The Glass Key.